Construction projects can be massive undertakings that take years of effort and planning. And the bigger the project, the more expensive any mistakes will be. And these mistakes can be really expensive, from $16 billion spent on an airport that was never even used to the most dangerous bridge of all time. On this episode of Built a Billion, we present to you the top 4 most expensive construction mistakes in the world. And make sure you stay till the end to see the last mistake on our list, which unfortunately ended up costing human lives. If you love to hear about all the mega projects of the world, please subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Oroville spillover. The Oroville Dam on the Feather River in Northern California is the largest dam in America, but in 2017, this dam was the center of a really huge mistake. The Oroville Dam was meant to provide water, power generation, and flood control, but it was also 50 years old and hadn't been properly maintained throughout the years. Cue 2017, when the wettest winter of California's history flooded the river to 150% of its capacity, and the water level of Lake Oroville continued to rise. Normally, the water at the bottom of the dam would be directly released into the water, where at a certain level, the main spillway can be used to relieve the dam, and there's even an emergency maneuver that allows water to be released from the edges of the lake, and it had never been done before, but we'll get to that part later. And so, the operators activated the main spillway to relieve the dam, but after a while, they noticed a big issue. The foundation and concrete were extremely eroded and were about to give out. Surprisingly, proposals to improve the spillway were rejected years before, and now it was time to pay the piper. The water level and pressure kept rising, and workers saw no other option but to prepare the emergency spillway by removing trees on the hillside. So for the first time in history, workers opened the emergency spillways of the Oroville Dam. Millions of gallons of water flowed downstream, and 188,000 people were immediately evacuated from the area. After a week, water levels finally decreased, and people could return back to their homes. All in all, it took 1 year and $875 million to repair the 2 spillways. Damn, what a mistake. See what I did there? Tacoma Narrows Bridge. For this one, let's hop in the Built-A-Billion time machine and travel back to the 1940s, shall we? The Tacoma Narrows Bridge had already been built, and it connected Tacoma with the Kitsap Peninsula. It was the 3rd largest suspension bridge in the world after the George Washington and Golden Gate bridges, but everything was far from perfect. After the deck was built, it started to move vertically, which prompted the installation of hydraulic buffers to lessen the swaying of the bridge. The bridge officially opened on July 1st, 1940, and surely now everything would go smoothly, but except not really though. The bridge began to be so notorious for how it swayed that people started taking the scenic route to avoid the bridge altogether. People even traveled to watch the bridge wiggle as if it was a tourist attraction. 4 months later, the bridge started swaying as usual, but the movements became more and more vigorous until it just completely collapsed into the depths below. Miraculously, no one was injured, as at some point anyone with a brain knew not to travel on that bridge anymore. The engineers realized they had no support system in place, and their construction was extremely flawed. These guys became responsible for the worst failure in bridge engineering history, but at least the entire bridge industry took note that their methods and knowledge had to be upgraded. 10 years later, after going back to the drawing board, the upgraded model for the Tacoma's bridge was released with a web trust. 70 years later, and that version is still standing, with a parallel bridge containing extra lanes being added in 2007 to really show the world that bridge engineers have come a long way since the 1940s. And it all only took $786 million to get it done. Mexico City, Texaco Airport. In 2014, the president of Mexico announced the biggest mega project the country had seen in over 100 years, the Texaco Airport. The nation was overdue for a bigger airport to keep up with the growing population of people going in and out of it. It was poised to replace the most popular airport in Latin America, the International Airport in Mexico City. The president aimed to get this done in multiple phases, with the first being done in 2020 and the last phase in 2065. The goal was 6 runways and a capacity of 125 million annual passengers, making the airport one of the largest in the world. The project was supposed to cost around $13 billion, but Mexico would need to borrow billions of dollars with interest in order to finance it. So, 4 years later in 2018, the new president publicly stated he wanted to cancel the project due to claims of corruption and being over budget. Oh, and there's the minor fact that the airport was being built on sinking land. The new president even suggested that it would be extremely cheaper to trash the current project and build a much smaller and cheaper airport. After much support from the people, it was agreed the Texaco airport should be abandoned, with construction already 30% finished and Mexico in the red for $16 billion. Mexico is currently building a way smaller airport on an Air Force base, which will cost an extra $3.6 billion and will have a capacity of 20 million passengers per year once open. South Korea bridge disaster. The Seongsu Bridge over the Han River was built in 1977 and connected the Seongdong-do district with the Gangnam-gu district in the capital. Repeated overloading caused one of the biggest tragedies in the country's history when the building collapsed in 1994. One whole slab between the 5th and 6th legs of the bridge fell 50 meters and landed on the water with a car, van, and a bus sitting on top of it. Furthermore, some cars fell off of the edge and sank into the river. Tragically, 32 people died in the incident, with 29 being passengers on that bus. The investigation went underway immediately. Initially, the bridge was made for vehicles under 36 tons, but over the years, Seoul's population rapidly grew, and along with that came more traffic. And along with that, loads of over 47 tons per vehicle became allowed. Welding work was lacking on the steel trusses of the suspension structure. The support began to rust, and the overall condition was deteriorating. If that's not enough, the bridge wasn't maintained properly despite several warnings. All these negligent factors led to a truly horrific event. 7 city officials responsible for maintaining the bridge were arrested, while the mayor was forced to step down. Turns out, this wasn't the first bridge accident in South Korea either. 8 bridges had collapsed since the 1970s, with 3 of them being over the same Han River. The bridge school in South Korea must have sucked, and so the government enacted an inspection program for all bridges in South Korea. Next, the country prepared to fix the Seongsu Bridge, but soon realized the structure was well beyond repair. So, they demolished it and built a new bridge, completed 3 years after the collapse. They may have spent money to build a new bridge, but there's no amount of money that can replace what was lost on that fateful day on the Seongsu Bridge in 1994. What do you think about these expensive construction mistakes? Let me know in the comments below. Click the pinned comment to visit the Built-A-Billion merch store to purchase some merch of your very own. I have plenty more videos for you to binge watch, so click that video on the screen to watch something you haven't seen. And thanks for visiting Built-A-Billion.